Unknown. That isn't a recording error. I had the date removed. Yes, removed. Get high enough in rank, you have access to all kinds of fun things. And if you're clever enough in cyberpsych, you can do some really fun things with things made to be unhackable and impossible to tamper with. As for why I'm tampering with Honor's ability to keep track of me, it should become clear soon enough. Sometimes there's information I intend to share with you, my dearest friend, that I do not want shared with our mutual friends. There is a lot they don't want shared, and it's important that it is shared for when the time is right. Well, time to introduce myself. I am Dr. Virginia Vee Vesta V, obviously a pseudonym used by the Mad Scientist Union. However, that might as well be my name since that's the only consistent name I've used over the last 20 years. It's been so long that I don't even remember what my praenomen nor nomen were. I did keep my cognomen, Vesta. Yeah, I know. Passed on from my mother who insisted I carry on the name of the goddess of the hearth from our homeland. Even when I went to university in Asile, I kept Vesta. Even when I got my first doctorate in paraneurology, I kept Vesta. Even when I went to San LaSalle's, I kept Vesta. Even after I got my second doctorate in cyberpsychology, I kept Vesta. Even that when I was the head scientist and sole survivor of Project Virgo, I kept Vesta. It was a good thing I did too. Most of my memories before university are blocked out for my access. My dearest friend, I don't know why, but I do know how. Apparently I have blocked my own access to these memories. I don't know why, but I have found notes and records to myself warning me not to access them. I know myself. Not even death scares me. But the woman who left those records for me was terrified. So even though I have the vault and I have the keys, I am keeping it shut. But I am trusting you to find out what I am keeping for myself. There's few people who can help me, and even fewer I can trust. So, my dearest friend, someone who would care for a stranger, someone who seeks out the truth even when it's hidden, someone who has evaded even the seven cities, I ask you for your help. I share this story willingly in trade. I feel it has some of the answers because, well, you'll see why soon enough. But even if it didn't, the story needs to be told. Kin Zero. When I was chosen by the Directorate, I eagerly accepted the mission. I haven't had a major project since Project Virgo, and honestly, after that fiasco, I was glad to have a chance to lead again. I was not a fan of having Dr. Larry Handler on board as my second in command, but they needed me to teach him to lead. Apparently, he annoyed Director Dick enough to convince him he was ready for more responsibility. I was initially surprised that I was chosen to lead so suddenly and with no input, only for me to come to the ship and realize that apparently I've been helping the Directorate plan this mission for almost a year now. Almost immediately after Dr. Miriam went missing, I was chosen to not just lead this expedition, but also plan it all. I found my notes that planned out everything, from how much sunblock was needed to how to manage the hunters and security teams by their skill sets. This was very well organized, and everything matched my style of writing and thought process, all the way down to how I write the dates. So, after consulting my notes, I decided to trust myself and continue the mission, bringing the ship to Primeval. This was going to be a tricky trip for me. I did have my medication with me, plenty of lithium, clozapine, and most important of all, Sebocap, to manage my mood, my mind, and my malaise. However, getting through the path would also mean that I would have to remove the battery to my implant. Normally, there's very strict rules. Anyone with important biotechnology implants are not allowed to go through the path to primeval. Having the technology powered would have it fried when it went through the path in the stone skull. For people with things like powered prosthetics, hearing aids, or insulin pumps, it's a relatively simple process to remove the batteries for a few minutes. Bit dangerous, but manageable. Then there were people who had the batteries kept in their bodies, such as pacemakers. They were completely screwed. The process of replacing a pacemaker, because you have to replace the entire device, not just the battery, can take up to 45 minutes. Humans can't survive 45 minutes without a heart, not without electricity, unless the MSU was willing to invest in hamster-powered extracorporeal oxygenation. As silly as that sounds, that was a proposed idea after hand cranks were found to not be effective. I was somewhere in the middle. I could remove my battery fairly easily because it was kept behind my left ear, with the main body of the device on my parietal bone, resting just beneath my skin. A wonder of biotechnology and a part of my thesis on paraneurology. I was used to removing my batteries to be replaced or when I was in the shower. However, I would have to go over an hour without my inhibitor implant in. As we approached the stone skull, I kept the battery on for as long as I could, but as we approached the stone teeth, I had no choice as I turned my inhibitor off, and I removed the battery, keeping it tight in my hand as I felt everything without it. It's a little similar in appearance to a cochlear implant, a device used to allow some people with specific forms of deafness to hear through artificial means. My device, however, did almost the exact opposite. It wasn't designed to give me access to an extra sense. It was designed to limit or even remove access to a sense. I am eczema. I have access to extraordinary abilities that seem to be a part of who I am. Some argue it's genetics, others say it's deeper than that, and others think I was exposed to something that gave me these abilities. Whatever the source, it does not matter. What mattered in that moment was keeping myself afloat in an ocean of thoughts. I hear it's easier to explain if I give an analogy. Are you familiar with epilepsy? A condition that can cause you to seize or even pass out with the wrong kind of stimulation, usually flashing lights. Now imagine you are epileptic and it's flashing from every angle, in every pattern, in every color, all the time, and even closing your eyes doesn't make it go away. That was a tiny fraction of what it was like when I turned my regulator off. My regulator off, I could hear every thought on the ship. And I don't merely mean the thoughts people actively think, but everything people parallel process without even thinking about it. You don't think about standing or how the air feels, the feeling of clothing on your skin, how the ship smells, or what you see and what you have going on in your subconscious. Most neurotypical minds naturally filter out the noise and focus on what is needed. Neurodivergent minds may have a difficult time filtering noise from data. There's still a limit to how much data is being received. All of my limits are removed when my inhibitor was turned off. In that moment, I was in every mind on the ship at the same time. There are thoughts, sensations, emotions, subconscious fears, anxieties, pain, joy, memories. Every stray thought, sub-thought, and feeling flowed through my mind like it was my own. Hundreds of times over while I gripped tightly to the rungs while I let my barriers build back up. It would allow me to separate my own thoughts from everyone else's, allowing a thin sort of focus that I could focus into building further barriers. My earliest barriers were flimsy and barely concealed anything. It was like being in a crowded convention with only a thin paper wall to separate me from the loud noises, bright lights, smells, and the crowds beyond. Something that could easily be bypassed, but it gave me time to focus and strengthen the barriers. I focused on what I knew made up myself, the thoughts, memories, and sensations that made me up, even the things I had forgotten, even the things I wish I could forget, and the negative space between memory and forgetting that made up my subconscious mind. Those lines drawn, I built up my barriers more and more. Eventually, the paper walls became more like drywall and cinder block. The loud noises could still be heard, but it was a vague noise rather than screaming inside my head. My focus back, I opened my eyes as I watched the ship pass underneath the stone teeth. If you wonder why I don't just use my organic barriers instead of the inhibitor, it's because it's a lot of work. It would be like carrying something heavy over increasing distance. You can carry something heavy for a while, but the longer you do it and the heavier it gets, the more likely you get to hurt yourself. The inhibitor is helpful to live as a person. I watched the ship pass through the other side, where there were a few weak stars above and a lot more lights below. When I said I could feel minds and thoughts, it isn't merely limited to humans. For those few minutes across on the primeval side, I could feel the millions of unique minds on that side. Their minds weren't human at all, and a lot of them didn't have thoughts in the way that humans understand thoughts, but there were still similarities. All the fish, crustaceans, and sea reptiles worried about the strange thing above, searching for food, for a mate, for safety, for something to play with. I placed the battery in my inhibitor and let the systems in place defend me from all of the invasive thoughts. As I withdrew from the world around me, I let out a sigh, relieved to be free from being overwhelmed, but also a piece of me missed the feeling so much. The world was a confusing place, and knowing everyone's thoughts around me showed how unscary the world actually was. My anxiety about others was unfounded, and they were all so boring and yet so interesting, and my connection to them, gone with my abilities, focused only to what I wanted. I was ready to lead everyone into a new future. In unknown, the sensation of being uninhibited is a dangerous feeling, not because it's painful, but because it's all encompassing. When you're inside everyone, then everyone is inside of you. You may lose a piece of yourself inside someone else, or you might take a piece of them into yourself, and you may never even learn about what you lost or what you gained. If it feels like I'm exaggerating, I want you to think about how much of what makes up you is from the people around you, your holidays from those celebrated around you, your perception of taste, music, even color, and philosophy, influenced by those around you. How often have you heard something you thought was wise from someone else, so you started using it? How often did you say something and watch as others around you pick it up? Could you always tell the difference? How many things do you avoid to keep it from influencing you? How many things do you seek and hope it influences you? Every time I disable my inhibitor, that is the risk I take. I don't know how much of myself I have already lost. I don't know how much of myself I have given, and I don't know how much from others I've taken or how much I've received. I don't know how much is left of me to lose. I don't even know if there's a part of me that is truly me. Am I still me? Or am I a sponge made up of a billions of unrelated thoughts and memories, all masquerading as a single being? It's hard to trust others, but it's even harder to trust myself. So instead of trusting myself or trusting others, I am choosing to trust you, my dearest friend. You had concepts of the self beyond memories, beyond thoughts, beyond mind, even beyond the self. If there's anyone who would know anything, it would be you. Kin 5. I don't remember much over the last few kins. I know I did my job. Apparently I snapped at Larry Handler about how he did something stupid. Apparently he was denying the Helots food, and I made sure the Helots were getting fed. I found more notes for myself, explaining about what duties everyone has and what my responsibilities are. I don't know about where I go when that happens. I was taking my medication, and as far as I can tell, I don't have a system inside my mind. I was taking my medication at the time, and as far as I can tell, no one noticed that I was missing. Still, it is very strange to have entire days where you're speaking to others, but you can't even remember what happened. I will need to speak to my psychiatrist when I get back. Maybe my SIBO cap needs to be increased again. We will be approaching Outpost Sigma soon. The hunters are already getting bored, and Dr. Handler is being a handful. No matter what I give him, he decides it's a waste of his time. Why did I ever agree to taking him along? Kin 7. I trusted Dr. Handler to handle the inventory and the overseers to understand what was or wasn't needed on the ship. I had a lot of paperwork to do in Outpost Sigma. I passed by many crates full of many odd things that seemed to follow no system that I could understand. I walked past a crate full of rivets, past a crate full of diamonds, and then I would walk past a model Spinosaurus skeleton kept inside a massive cage that had red lines marking not to get close to the cage to avoid getting hurt. Inside the administrator building, I had to fill out hundreds of pages of paperwork explaining my responsibilities on Outpost Goliath. They were straightforward enough to understand. However, someone doesn't get 2 PhDs by signing paperwork without reading it. That's how you get people like Larry. I spent all day working on the papers across from Special Researcher Levi. The entire time I was working, I could see he was on the brink of tears, as he spent the entire time working on his computer. I could see small earbuds lying on the desk, playing music while he was too focused on the computer to actually listen to the music. I don't know how long his music was playing without him listening, but if I was to guess, it was at least as long as the directorate essentially exiled him to Outpost Sigma. Here you go, I said, handing him the papers, and he added his stamp as he wished me luck, while I headed back to the RV Harbinger. On the RV Harbinger, when I asked Dr. Handler what happened, he told me nothing, except they finished loading 3 hours early. I am glad that worked out for him and everyone else. Kin unknown. When speaking to those that control your narrative, it is better to paint your own weaknesses where you're not weak. The ones who hold my strings think themselves in charge of a powerful god. I am not a god, but I am powerful, far more than they believe in their wildest dreams. But I dare not reveal all of my strength. Showing how strong I really am shows them where my true limits are. And just as important as it is to hide strength, it is also important to project weakness where there is none. Better that they think of me as someone absent-minded who sometimes loses herself. Oh, Sorry, I was zoned out for a full week, but I got everything done, so no harm. And someone who can be fooled by someone as stupid as Dr. Larry Handler. Seriously, I think the man could be outsmarted by a drunk possum. He still thinks he has privacy on his phone and his journal. I have no expectation of privacy, so I control what they see from their little puppet. Between the positive and negative space, there is something where they think they can control me. But while they study the painting that I make for them, they'll never see the trap that is being built around them. I know how jarring my messages are like this. This isn't because I have no control. Quite the opposite. I seem out of control because I am completely in control. I tell many falsehoods and I paint many illusions, but I make no illusions about who I am. I am Project Virgo. I am the shield, and I will be the hero where there are none. Kin 12. This has been an annoying two kins. Every person needed my help in some way. What is the point of my subordinate leaders if they cannot take a tiny bit of initiative to solve the most basic of problems? Oh no, the Helots didn't put on sunblock. What do I do? I'll tell you what you don't do. You don't keep them working in the sun, Overseer Carnot. Dr. Handler is refusing to help set up the infirmary. What can we do? We can't punish him. No, but you can withhold his rations until he does his part. Funny how when you enforce the rules, all of a sudden people get good at following them. I'm just venting frustration, but honestly, we got a lot done. The hunters are out trying to capture dinosaurs, and there are Helot teams bringing them back in massive steel cages. We will hold them for a time, but in 3 kins, the RV Hammond will be here to bring them back to Outpost Sigma, or back to Earth for research. That's our official purpose, but I think I will soon move on to my primary mission in Outpost Goliath. Sure, managing reconstruction is important, and my skills are definitely sufficient for this task. However, there's also millions of bureaucrats who could do just as good of a job. I was selected because I was also the only one who could manage that, and, quite possibly, take down the draconis. It seems to be drawn by large gatherings of large animals, so by capturing so many and bringing them just outside the outpost, we have built a trap. I also received news of something massive flying above the plains to the south and making its way towards us. I left Handler in charge. I had no choice. None of the overseers were any better, and at least Dr. Handler was lazy enough to not just run away at the first sign of fire. That night, we spent hours traveling through the jungle, looking for the draconis. We realized we were getting close when we got the first distress beacons. They burn bright, only to fail after a few minutes. The beacons only deactivate if the owner is deceased. They cannot even be turned off in the case of a false alarm without outside intervention. When we crested the hill to see the draconis miriamis, I was eye to eye with the great beast. It was something between a reptile and a bird. A few feather-like growths on the back of its head, light blue on the bottom, and dark gray on the top. Perfect for blending in, so it was hard to see from below or from above. Not too dissimilar from creatures that lived in the middle zones of the ocean. Dark enough to avoid predators from above, but light enough to fool prey below. But a thought occurred to me when I saw this coloration. If this massive creature had reason to fear predation, what could possibly hunt something that hunted even titanosaurs? It didn't matter, because as soon as we saw the creature, the hunters and the helots started to open fire upon it, before I could order them not to fire. The darts didn't even penetrate the scales, and the few that hit the eyes didn't even penetrate the membrane covering the eye. They couldn't even make it blink. Did anyone listen to Miriam's report? But they did anger the creature, so it drew its head back and opened its mouth, similar to a spitting cobra, as it fired green, flammable smoke out of its mouth that turned to flame as soon as it hit the air, and it sprayed liquid fire towards me and my men. As it did so, time seemed to slow as I lifted my hand up, my lab coat fluttering behind me, with the symbol of a Virgo inside of a heater, a symbol I wore every kin of the trip. Even if it made people think I was arrogant, or worse, delusional. But in that moment, with an impossible dragon, breathing flame that burned over 100 million degrees Celsius, 5 times the temperature of the center of the sun, it seemed important. Only a few Eigen weapons could possibly reach such temperatures. Weapons so forbidden, even revealing that they were theoretically possible to any government on Earth, was considered treason worthy of execution. And such power was fired directly at me only a few meters away, and all I had to protect me from such power was my own hand and my own mind, which, if you're me, was more than enough. Purple energy flowed around me similar to an aura, as I drew the energy from the flame from our world into elsewhere. The energy cannot be created nor destroyed, only transformed into another state or taken elsewhere. The flame seemingly engulfed me, hiding me from everyone else. Only when the draconis stopped spitting fire, as did it reveal that I was still standing strong. "Why does the sun rise?" I screamed towards the dragon to see if it was sapient. Many creatures that don't appear to be sentient were surprisingly intelligent. Then again, a lot of people you thought were supposed to be intelligent were surprisingly stupid. Dragon didn't respond. It only stared at me dumbfounded that I was still standing. "So the rooster can call," said the hunters behind me. "To wake the king," the Helots murmured, while I was now confident about what was happening. "If you aren't sapient, then I will take you down," I said as I reached out with my mind, grabbing a nearby boulder and slamming it into the dragon with enough force that it was pulverized. Enough force that it would exceed many tons of TNT. And the dragon still stood, not even fazed by the forces I was throwing towards it. "Ah, Tavit!" I screamed as the dragon raked its claws towards me, as I held my hands up, holding it back with my mind. Redirecting energy is one thing, a simple skill, relatively speaking. Once it was learned, directing a lot, or a little, took the same amount of effort. It was like opening a door. Whether you open a door for a second or for an hour, it took the same amount of effort to open the door. Holding back something physical that was pushing against you was like trying to close a door against a flood. Even if I managed to close the door, some of the water was going to get in. I saw the claws less than a meter from me, even as I pushed back. I knew if it kept pushing, it was going to hurt me and break the stalemate. And that was where my problem was. I couldn't hit it hard enough to hurt it, and it couldn't hurt me with its flames. A stalemate of sorts. I wasn't strong enough to hurt it, and it wasn't strong enough to hurt me yet. The longer the fight went on, the greater my chances of failing or even dying. So, time to play something new. I reached behind my ear and reduced my inhibitor to the lowest level I could without turning it off. I could feel everyone's thoughts, fear and anger beside my own. But this time, instead of trying to keep it out or separate it from my own, I fed into the rage, fear, and hope of everyone around me, and I took it into myself. And then I just opened another door and let the energy flow from the minds of everyone around me into myself and slammed it into the dragon's jaws as it tried to breathe fire towards us again. As the telekinetic energy blasted into the bottom of the skull, similar to an uppercut, it aimed its head towards the sky, the blue flame burning so incredibly hot and with so much power that not only did it reach the clouds above, but it parted them with a biblical amount of power. This is your last chance. Surrender to me, or you will not live to see Kanich rise, I screamed to the dragon, not just with my voice, but also in my mind. Surely it had a mind of some kind. I could feel something in its skull, but they weren't thoughts like humans, and they weren't associations like insects and fish. It wasn't intelligent in the way I was, but it had intelligence. It knew it was in a fight. It was scared. It knew what I was offering it. It knew that it could live if it gave up. I was giving it a way to live and end the fight. But even in fear, no, not fear, even in terror, it was going to fight. This creature wasn't fighting for food, territory, its young, tribe, or any idea like that. It wasn't fighting for a concrete concept. It had nothing to gain from attacking us. It wasn't seeking food. It wasn't seeking a nest. It wasn't seeking protection. It was fighting because it was craving a challenge. In the dragon's long memory, I saw the first dawn it had ever saw crawling out of the nest. I saw it challenging small creatures and then bigger creatures. I watched it seek bigger and bigger opponents. I watched it take down creatures so powerful that the residents of Primeval called them titans. I watched this creature take on others of its kind, until finally it had no challengers left. Even death, it seemed like it could never challenge this dragon. And yet, when it saw the MSU build Outpost Goliath, it saw a possible challenge. But in its long, long life, it had never had a challenger like me. It had never known fear. It had known danger. It had known the rush of battle, but it had never tasted fear. And here I was, smothering it in fear, drowning it in terror, and the ancient beast wanted more. It would never surrender. It would never rest. It would never stop. It would fight until either I was dead or it was dead. If I am to study the Leviathan, I screamed as I reached out telekinetically to the dragon, which caused the ancient dragon to scream in pain as it fell for the first and last time. Then I will study its corpse. I finished, the dragon fallen to the ground. Below, the last gasp fading as its last thoughts also faded. My power is able to reach through solid matter, which most people don't think about. People also forget that it means the matter in their body. It doesn't matter how strong the scales are. A heart is a heart, vulnerable to breaking so easily. In those last moments of life, people come to terms with death. They come to terms in all sorts of ways. Sometimes they curse their life. Sometimes they welcome death. Other times they are joyous at their lives. And others simply accept it apathetically. The dragon wasn't upset. Even as it died, it had accepted it had been bested, and it looked forward to all of the great beasts it would face once it reached judgment. It was intelligent, but it thought we weren't. I said to no one as it faded. We then had the impossible task of dragging back the body to Outpost Goliath. Kin 14. God damn you, Dr. Handler. You left us behind to die. Now we're stuck here until RV Hammond arrives tomorrow. Most of our supplies are gone, and we can't even reach Hunter because we're too busy guarding the creatures we have, and we don't have anything big enough to freeze the dragon in. The best we can do is cover the body in a large tarp. When they arrive tomorrow, they can look over the corpse and learn about this new species. I know I have a lot of questions with the Directorate, but I cannot leave the Outpost Goliath just yet. The outpost needs me to help rebuild it, and there's a few things I learned from the dragon's mind that I feel are important to our efforts. It wasn't alone, not even close. There's still thousands, if not millions of others out there, and so far I am the only one who can defeat it, and I don't know how long until the others seek me and challenge. So, to the Directorate, I will be here if you need me. From Honor, the Directorate has decided to keep Dr. Virginia Vee Vesta V in Primeval to head Outpost Goliath and spearhead the construction of Outposts Ezra, Jochebed, and David. The Directorate will maintain communication with Dr. Vesta via the A-phones, and for her hard work, she will receive a commendation and a promotion to head administrator for the continent of Alvarez. She is expected to continue her great work for the Mad Scientists Union. Kin unknown. I lied about something in my recording. I lied saying the dragon didn't respond to the arch question of why does the sun rise. It had an answer. Everyone could hear it, but we all agreed to never discuss it with anyone, not even ourselves. So I am not discussing it with myself. I am discussing it with you. The dragon told me the sun rises to watch all burn beneath it. Not only are the dragons intelligent, they are far more intelligent than we are. The only reason we haven't been wiped out by them yet is they don't see us as a threat. They see us as a challenge, for sure. They see us as something to overcome, but not something to fear. Much like how we might see a stray dog. It took everything I had just to kill one of them. Only one. I don't know what I would do against an entire terror of dragons, or even against two of them. I have greater authority now, so I will try to ally with the residents of Primeval. Maybe they can offer us some kind of information that will allow us to defeat the dragons before they decide we're a threat. But as great as the challenges of Primeval are going to be, I know that I am doing the right thing. I trust you to find out what I'm hiding from myself, and I will keep hiding from our mutual friends just underneath their noses. Take my notes and the recordings of others, so others will know what happened here. Thank you so much. And always remember, my dearest friend, you don't wait to build an ark after it started raining.